The Weeknd, Hurry Up Tomorrow. It's an album.
Honestly, like, I'm speechless. That was one of the best moments from our live stream to The Weeknd's new album, Hurry Up Tomorrow. This is his sixth studio album, and it will finally complete the trilogy of After Hours, Dawn FM. And now we finally have Hurry Up Tomorrow. So, guys, if you want to check out our full live album reaction that we did with the Patreon community, all you have to do is check the pinned comment below. Let's get into this. I mean, going into that live stream, we had a lot of expectations. We knew that it was probably going to be the last album underneath the Weeknd moniker, and he comes out in 2025 in January and decides to drop one of the best albums of the year. So let's get into the artist performance. I mean, usually I would ask you, what did he do right? What did he do wrong? And honestly, I don't know what he did wrong on this artist performance for this album, because almost everything is near flawless, from the singing performances to the hooks, the melodies, the rhythms that he's attacking. Everything that he did across the board on this studio album was up to par for The Weeknd, plus more. So what did you like about it?
I mean, I was left speechless with the performances on this album. I think what floored me the most about The Weeknd's performance on Hurry Up Tomorrow was the way that he decided to end off so many songs in style. Like, for example, at the end of Wake Me Up, you just hear him like belting out the sustained note, and it's breathtaking, and there's even grace notes woven into it, and you're just in awe because you're like, wow, like this is some of the best singing that he's ever produced. And going back to what you were talking about for the choruses, that's a major, point of, I guess, analysis when you're talking about a pop album. The choruses have to hit, they have to be memorable, and they are here. They're super lively. Looking at Wake Me Up or Cry For Me, I even love the amount of reverb that you hear on certain choruses, like, for example, Reflections Laughing, which just adds this epic feel to the delivery.
Yeah.
That was fantastic. Even like in terms of the song structure, I think he did a great job there as well, because you'll often get a pre-chorus that leads into the chorus, and I love how much tension is packed into that pre-chorus before you reach the climax of the songs, which are usually the choruses of these tracks. So that's something else to marvel at. One of my favorite performances, though, definitely comes on Given Up On Me, especially going into the second part of that track, just because I love the patience in his delivery, and you're sort of like getting hypnotized by this intoxicating jazzy atmosphere, but he's also serving you these exceptional vocal inflections that are very warm, very fragile, and I felt like that was unique for the tracklist itself, and the outro on that song is performed beautifully. So those are some of the highlights for me. We can keep talking about it.
A lot of thoughts right there.
There's so many thoughts that come through my head when it comes to what he accomplished here, bro. But let me ask you this, like, was there anything at all that you feel like he could have improved on as a vocalist, or just in terms of like his artistry that was on display
Of
here?
course not. And I think going back to the early catalog of The Weeknd, right? So looking at the trilogy, we're going to be releasing our top 10 Weeknd songs, and I was revisiting a lot of material there, right? And a lot of those vocals are raw. A lot of those vocals came on early on in his career, obviously, and we know with singers, like, sometimes they strain their vocals, right? Or sometimes they sound a bit more dated, if that makes sense to you. Like, they'll never sound the same as they do at the beginning of their career. But to be quite honest with you, the fact that he's in his sixth studio album and he's able to give me vocal performances like Baptized in Fear, like that chorus, and the notes that he's hitting and how great they sound and how grandiose they sound, to me is extremely impressive. Not only that, but going into this album, I didn't know what to expect, right? There's certain albums from The Weeknd that maybe feel a bit more like R&B and hip-hop blend, if that makes sense to you, or then there's certain albums that feel like they're a bit more pop-centric where he stays away from the rapping, but he was super dynamic throughout this entire performance, right? You even had him attacking Brazilian funk production on something like Sao Paulo that sounded 1,000 times better in the context of this album. Not only that, I love the rapping performances on this album. Something like Enjoy the Show, that first verse, the flow was fantastic. He was hitting great flows. He was locked in, and I think that speaks to the duality of The Weeknd. And I think with Dawn FM And with After Hours, people were a bit more comfortable and maybe were a bit more like, okay, this is what The Weeknd is, right? Like, he's great with his vocals. He's going to give you these incredible melodies. But people forget that, like, there are a lot of rap verses within his catalog. And that's something that was sprinkled in early on within the trilogy as well. So to see that make a return in the track list, for me, was very important. Not only that, going into this album, it was an hour and 28 minutes, 22 songs. In order to keep me engaged for that long of a time, from start to finish, to me is impressive in itself. All the types of different things that he was doing. Example, a song like "Give It Up on Me." That ballad at the end with the piano in the background was beautiful. One of the best performances of his entire fucking career within that. Not only that, but then you go to, I believe it was, Big Sleep, and then you have a big transition into the album, and we're going to talk about that in the content.
And that's why Big Sleep is such a standout, is because of the way that he actually distorts his vocals. It's a very dizzying experience just because it's starting off with a lullaby and then it turns into his demise, which plays into the concept of the album. But
and what's cool too is that, like, you could see vocally, like, he'll change his tone and his shift depending on what type of record he's attacking, right? Something like Red Terror, that was darker in tone, and something that has a bit more of like a darker tone on the subject matter front. You see that his vocals are a bit scarier, they sound a bit more menacing, and that's what I like about, his artist performance throughout this entire project. They're dynamic, not a single performance feels repeated, and he's giving you some of his best ever performances in his career. Like, I feel like he peaked here. This is the best project and the best performance that he could possibly offer you.
Yeah,
if I'm being honest.
I think what was very different compared to like Trilogy or like some of the albums you find in the middle of his catalog is the fact that the vocals sounded totally polished from beginning to end. And it's not to say that there isn't certain rhythms or certain moments where he sounds a bit rawer, but there is this almost perfect finish to the way the vocals are mixed and mastered, and that was consistent from beginning to end. So that was something that I was able to marvel at as a fan as well. And in terms of the rapping performances, I mean, sure, you get a couple, you don't get really too many, but he was dynamic with his voice in other ways. But I do feel like in terms of the rap-centric stuff, it was kind of as prominent as it was with every project. Like, even looking at After Hours, you had songs like Snow Child where he's giving you a rap-based performance. So that wasn't something that really made me freak out or anything. It was just sort of like standard Weeknd giving you a couple of rapping performances, and he executed well on them. Like, for example, I Can't Wait to Get There. I think what was the coolest thing about the rapping there was just how seamlessly he can blend the rapping and the singing and almost intertwine both styles seamlessly. So for me, the artist performance was perfect. There's not much more that I could have asked for a pop album when it comes to an artist keeping me engaged, showing off their vocal range, and hitting all the notes that they're attempting. So I was left satisfied, bro.
It was extremely satisfying to see him, reach a new level of artistry. I feel like The Weeknd really pushed himself here, and if this was going to be the final album underneath the moniker, I feel like he gave it his all, and it was passionate performance after passionate performance. Even a song like Without a Warning, that hook and the notes that he's hitting on that chorus are just absolutely beautiful. So it's a perfect rating every single day of the week. But okay, let's go into the content matter. So this is a big topic of conversation whenever it comes to a studio album for The Weeknd. He always has themes, he always has concepts, and I feel like now in the latter half of his career, not only has he became a master of world building, but there's this lore that's built up around the character. There's this feeling going into the new album where it's like, what's next, right? And going back to Dawn FM, just to give you guys a bit of context, it felt like The Weeknd was finally coming to a realization that he was living this life of toxicity and that he was going down this path that would lead to his own demise, and that, he finally turned a new page in his book, and that he was ready to move on from the lifestyles that he was living, within the trilogy, and of course within After Hours, where you had that toxicity and you had that sort of dark energy that was being portrayed throughout the lyrics. Now, this is what's interesting. You go into this album and you listen to something like Giving Up on Me, and he literally says, I'm a crock of shit. I've been lying. I have been lying straight to your faces for so long because I am not on a path of redemption. I'm never sober. I've been doing the same things I've been doing, and I am sorry. But there's also this feeling of self-acceptance throughout the album, and this sort of thing where it's like, I have to kill off The Weeknd to be able to live my life properly. go into a different direction, and now we'll see what it comes out of it when it comes to the Abel moniker. But what were the main themes you picked up on, like going through the studio album?
Oh, I mean, there's so many, but I think like the first question was like, how is the story gonna end for this character, right? Because After Hours almost felt like The Weeknd was experiencing hell on earth, and a lot of audiences thought that it was symbolizing his own death on that album. And then you go to Dawn FM, he's sort of like in this purgatory state. He's in limbo. We don't know where he's going to end up. And then everybody assumed that Hurry Up Tomorrow was going to be the afterlife. And what I like about what he did was that he played with everybody's expectations, because you go into that first track, Wake Me Up, and he literally says, there is no afterlife. And he sort of has this very bleak and nihilistic view on what's to come for The Weeknd. He says that he thinks everything is just going to fade to black, and that he's in this dream state, and he feels like once he comes out of it, he's going to be alone, and he's not going to be aware of where he's headed. He's going to lose consciousness. So I thought that was interesting that, we're sort of like, we've moved on from this limbo state, but we're also still there as we're like in the dire moments, just as he's about to be killed off. And I think what was the most interesting to me about the concept of the album, and we can talk about this through songs like, for example, Open Hearts. On that song, he's singing about delaying his own demise because of a lover's words and wanting to hold on to that relationship. So that told me, like, okay, going to the afterlife or dying is a deliberate choice for The Weeknd.
Yeah.
And it's all about, when does he feel like it's the right time to kill off the Weeknd character?
Okay, but this is what's crazy for me within that narrative, right? Because then I go to something like Reflections Laughing, for example, right? And you get that mini, like I would say, transition right into the second half of the song when Travis comes in, and it feels like it's almost creeping up on him more and more and more, and he's getting closer to it. So it feels like that choice of staying prominent while also living these lifestyles that he is now creeping up on him, and he doesn't have a control over it. And then you finally get to the climax of the album, which is Take Me Back to LA, and then after that, Big Sleep. And he seems great, right? He seems happy again. You get Timeless right before, talking about how iconic he is, how he could seduce your girl. Obviously, it's a great performance with Cardi. Take Me Back to LA. It feels like he's finally comfortable to go back into that toxic lifestyle, go back in the sun, go back to LA, live the Hollywood lifestyle, and then boom, you get Big Sleep, right? And it starts off on a very positive note, and then everything starts distorting. Everything starts to fade away.
Take Me Back to LA is pretty dark, though. I don't want to say that it's happy he's able to return. Like, I view that more as like he thought back to a time where that's all he wanted. His aspirations were to become this star and make it out of Toronto, make it out of homelessness, etc. But in reality, by the end of that song, he says, "I just want my soul back."
Okay,
being The Weeknd consumed me and my soul, and I've been forced to use drugs as a crutch throughout my career. I've had this fascination of chasing number ones and of being this megastar who has to perform in the biggest stages in the world. And I feel like that's what was different about this album compared to the rest of his discography, was that he was finally unveiling the curtain. He's like, this is what it's like to be The Weeknd on and off the stage. I'm going to have moments where I'm going to fucking lose my voice, and you got that on the skit I Can't Fucking Sing, which I thought was genius for the cinematic value of the album. But just to say, I feel like he was finally being real with us.
Okay, but this is what's interesting though about Take Me Back to LA, right? You go into verse 2, and I thought the same thing, but he's kind of talking about it in a present state about how he wants to go back. He's saying, "Take me back to a place where the snow would fall on my face, and I miss city lights.
Home.
I left too young." But
there's no snow in LA. Let's think about it that way.
No, I understand, but I just don't understand then the first verse and how it connects into the second. But I get what you're saying though.
So okay, well, right before Take Me Back to LA, and
Yes.
guys, listen, we're going through this just because there's so much to unpack with the concept of this album. But if you go back to Niagara Falls, which is the song right before it, he says, "The sky's burning, set my heart on fire. I lost my life. I'm going back in time." So he tells us he's taking a trip down memory lane, and that's how he starts the first verse off, saying that he wants to go to LA, and that's him being an aspiring star. And then we're grounded back to reality come verse 2, where he's like, "I want my soul now."
I see.
Yeah.
I
But yeah,
see. And
going
I see
back to Reflections, to Big Sleep, yeah, that's where there is a huge tonal shift, and now he's sort of embracing that, like, he's a couple of steps away from reaching, I guess, the big death, you could say, for The Weeknd. And it's super interesting because he gets spiritual and he starts talking to God and asks for mercy and asks to be forgiven. And I think that there's a big parallel throughout this entire album where it's like there's the character of The Weeknd and how he's affected, and then there's also Abel, the human being, and how the Weeknd and him are one and the same, but they're also so different, and how it's Abel who really wants redemption and the ability to start fresh under a new persona, because that new musical persona is also going to lead to new and different life decisions, right? Like, he's probably moving into a stage now, and I think he said this in interviews, where he wants to be potentially a father and wants to be more mature, and he's going to have to change, just, I guess, his lifestyle, and that'll probably change the influence on the music.
And that was extremely prominent on Red Terror as well. And then towards the end of Red Terror, you get this outro, and this is kind of like reminiscent of like what he would do with Dawn FM, where he would have like almost this I would say extra character that was kind of narrating, right? I'm not sure if you remember that within Dawn FM, and it almost makes a return towards the end of this. And again, get spiritual with you. Death is nothing at all. It does not count. I have only slipped away into the next room. Nothing has happened. So it's crazy because like there's almost this acceptance of passing away, and like this is all I could give you guys, And even going further into the story of this album, you go into Hurry Up Tomorrow, which is the the closer of the album, and it's sort of a thing of like, I give you guys everything. Like, this is really all that I have to offer right now as The Weeknd, and I can't do this anymore. And then boom, you get the crazy transition towards the end of the song, which then goes into the next, like his first ever mixtape. So I feel like this album is a full circle moment, and looking at the content matter from the context of someone, that was really invested into The Weeknd's career, someone that followed his journey from the trilogy all the way up to now, this is extremely satisfying. Mm-hmm. This is a great way to end the story. I think that this is the album that will do that, and it's a perfect circle moment, going all the way back to House of Balloons, into, like, from Hurry Up Tomorrow into that. So I think it's fucking genius. I really do. Like, seeing how he wrapped everything together and how it all came full circle, it's so interesting.
Yeah, and I think the big question was, where is The Weeknd going to end up? And on that outro, on that closer song, he says that when he dies, he wants heaven. And it's interesting because it's left sort of open-ended, and I think the reason for that is because the audience decides ultimately where he ends up. And I think it's a question of legacy, Will The Weeknd and that moniker and the persona and the music that came from it, will it be cherished? Will it be celebrated in the future? What will that legacy be of that, sort of embodiment? Will it be praised? Will it not be praised? And I think that's where the representation of heaven and hell comes. But it's super fascinating. But I think that from a writing point of view, this is like so easily his strongest album, looking at a brilliant song concept like Red Terror, where he's singing from the perspective of his mother who's speaking to her baby, which is The Weeknd, and she details having to flee from Ethiopia during the Civil War to give her baby a better life.
And she promises that baby that like she will be there next to him no matter what,
Mm-hmm.
And it speaks to like how she supported him throughout his life. And I think it's one of those moments where like an artist really opens up about, his relationship with a parent, and it goes completely right. Like it's beautifully executed upon. The writing was clear, and it's a sort of album where you need multiple listens to pick up on everything. And I think that's what's interesting about this album is it's supposed to be labeled this massive pop album, but yet there's such layering to the content matter. You have to follow along from start to finish. Again, this is a 22 song masterclass. Like you can't miss a song on this album because you want to be engaged throughout it and really look at the writing, and every single track has its part to play. So with that being said, I think we're giving it a perfect rating.
It is going to be a perfect rating, and I just want to say this one line that kind of unlocked a lot of the themes and just the concept for me, and this was on Without a Warning, where he says, "I should have been sober, but I can't afford to be boring."
Yeah.
That's a line that really stuck with me.
And he kind of just says, like, fuck it. Like, it's sort of like, are you not entertained sort of, like, moment for him where he just says, fuck it. I did wrong, and I'm definitely not the cleanest dude, but I did it for the moniker, and I did it for the entertainment, and I did it for
Yep.
my fans. And to be able to end off on that type of note, I think
Crazy.
you can't ask for much more. But let's go into the features. This was interesting because the features were hidden, but we knew that Timeless was going to be featured on this track list.
As well as Sao Paulo.
Yes.
With Anita.
With Anita and Playboy Cardi were both confirmed for this track list. With that being said, I feel like every single feature on here has a part to play. It feels minimal, but also when you get to those tracks, they're sprinkled in so perfectly throughout the album because the pacing works with it, where maybe you might have been disengaged if you didn't get Anita's vocals on Sao Paulo, or maybe, those Playboy Cardi verses didn't make the final cut. You were like, I'm not sure, but at the end of the day, I think everyone had their part to play. So let's start off with Anita, right? She's on track 4 for Sao Paulo. I love the way they looped her vocals, especially for the production. You're getting that bounce, you're getting that Brazilian funk that just fucking thumps throughout the entire song, and her vocals are so well mixed into there. And it's crazy because the I Can't Fucking Sing song, or should I say interlude, then bleeds into it, and it also signifies like, okay, we're going on with the show. We're going on with it. I can't fucking sing, but I have no choice but to give you guys bangers, So how did you like Anita on that track?
I thought it was cool. When I first heard the song, I'm like, okay, this sounds more like a sample because I feel like in the mix it was purposefully sort of distorted, but she sounded super fierce on it, and it wove into the instrumental perfectly for me. I think more than anything, it felt just like a compliment to the beat. That's kind of how I took it. So I thought that was really well done. And that song as a whole just sounded fantastic in the context of the album. It gained new life for me, and it was a song that I grew to appreciate. But the next feature to talk about is Travis Scott on Reflections, Laughing. And
this was a genius collaboration.
Yeah, I think this was brilliant just because we spoke about this in the live album reaction that we did. The whole song is through the perspective of the Weeknd and his perception, because he gets a phone call from a lady friend and she's concerned for him. She's asking him if he's all right. And as he's listening to her talk, we hear him
drinking and smoking.
Smoking, popping pills. You hear the pill bottles rattling. So you could tell that he's getting faded. And as he's getting faded, slowly, her vocals get distorted, and
become drowned out.
They become drowned out. We start to hear her in a lower pitch, and it's almost like a fucking perfect transition from that woman's voicemail into Travis Scott's feature, who is matching that low pitch, which again makes perfect sense because it's from the perception of the Weeknd's distorted fucking perception. And Travis Scott's rapping in this low pitch voice, and it's new for him. It's a cool flow that he's never used, and more than anything, I appreciate it just because it was a cool homage to the chopped and screwed sound, which is beautiful for Travis because he's from Houston. So I thought it was perfectly executed. How did you feel about just the flow and the performance?
Oh, I thought it was fantastic. By the way, it was Cherry 22 who did the transition for this song. Those are the female vocals that you're hearing when that section comes in. And again, there was a massive surprise factor with this feature because he wasn't announced for the album. We kind of figured because the Weeknd has been on many Travis Scott albums, right? When it comes down to like Pray for Love, for example, or Wonderful. But Travis has never been on a Weeknd album. So to have him come in for the final installment, he finally gets, that sort of placement for a Weeknd track list was monumental, and their fan base is aligned so nicely because they've been collaborating for years. And it almost feels like Travis is playing the monster or the bad guy in this song, right? Like it feels like now the Weeknd, he's almost speaking out of the perspective of the Weeknd to a certain extent, where now he's fully fucking faded. Like he's never going back to like being sober, at least for this track.
Now it's demon time.
And now it's demon time, right? And he's just like, fuck it, I'm on my shit. No one could fuck with me, and the top is where I'm supposed to be, and that's why I like it so much. But let's talk about Playboy Cardi on Timeless. This was a fucking hit from the jump. This was a hit from the jump. They could have not done it better, and I just love his vocals throughout the entire track.
Yeah, I think what was so dope was just the back and forth between like a lower pitch and a higher pitch for Cardi. That was so well balanced, and what I also appreciate is that we don't always hear Cardi with the clearest of vocals, and here his vocals sounded so polished, so much clarity in just the enunciation and the way that he was delivering every single fucking word on this verse. So it felt like Cardi was reborn for this verse. It was one of my favorite Cardi verses that I'd heard in quite some time. So I was thrilled to have it make the album.
Top
And
3 feature of his.
you know,
low-key of
some
all
people
time.
feel like, you know, maybe it doesn't fit the album. I thought it fit fucking perfectly, and it was a well-needed just jolt of energy sort of midway through the album. So, yeah, I thought that was a great bridge kind of song. But let's talk about Future, because Future has two performances on this song. One was obviously lengthier than the other, so let's start off with that one. We have him on Enjoy the Show, and what's super cool about this feature is that you're getting that duality from Future. You're getting the Hendrix and you're getting Future, the rapper, on here. And he has some really solid auto crooning, like some of the best that I've heard from him. Probably better than most of his auto crooning performances on We Still Don't Trust You, even though it's very short lived. And then you get a rapping performance where he's talking his shit, he's on his boss talk vibes. And what's cool too is that you get an homage back to Can't Feel My Face by The Weeknd, when Future raps Can't Feel My Face Anymore. So that was a cool callback to that old Weeknd song. But how did you feel about it? And were you impressed that Future was sort of playing into the concept of the song, which was just, you know, sort of the control and the possession that these drugs can have on someone?
Yeah, and there was no better person to bring in than Future, right? Like, a lot of his content matter over the course of his discography has always played into substance abuse and how, you know, he handles it in his day-to-day, right? And how it affects his love life, how it affects his fame, how it affects his personal health. So I think that it was fitting to have him on that track. It feels genuine, it feels raw. I'm really impressed with the vocal performances, to be quite honest with you. The melodies that he's hitting at the beginning of that performance not only feels better than like We Still Don't Trust You, but like you said, it feels like prime Hendrix Future, right? Where, and this is the thing, like, people often like stick it to us, right? Whenever we judge a Future vocal performance and we're like, he could definitely be doing better. This is the perfect example of that. He's gonna show up for this. This is The Weeknd's Hurry Up Tomorrow. He's gonna give you an A-class performance, and this is what this feature feels like. But do you want to go into the next one, Lou?
Last one. Very limited features, guys. Only had 5 different artists contributing vocals. And this is going to be Lana Del Rey on The Abyss. And honestly speaking, this is probably the best feature to me, even though it was one of the more minimal ones. I just love her beautifully haunting harmonies on this song, and then her showing off her octave range. It was just so minimal, but you know, we've heard her in The Weeknd before, and their voices contrast each other so fucking well, and that was the case once again here.
I love the way she closed off The Abyss.
Yeah,
It's arguably the best feature, like you said, most definitely.
I think
But
so.
the best thing about the feature list for me is that they all make sense for the concept of the album. There's not one that feels out of place or a collaboration that feels forced. I feel like this is one of the best feature lists that you could possibly have for a Weeknd album. And you didn't want to come in here and make it feel like a DJ Khaled album. He didn't have to get everyone on here, right? This had to make sense for the context of the storyline, because think about it, you bring too many people in, then after that there's holes in the writing and within the narrative of the album. So I think it was perfectly executed upon, where it was like, okay, let's put this here, let's put this there, and let's make it feel like a complete experience. And that's what you got with the feature list on this. So we're going to give it a perfect rating.
Perfect rating for the features. 22 songs, only chooses to have 5. It was a bold choice, but I think it was needed, because for his last hoorah as The Weeknd, you wanted him to dominate the majority of this track list. And yeah, I agree with you. I think it's definitely his best feature list, probably since Starboy, which also had great feature decisions. But yeah, let's keep on going, man. Production is up next. I was fucking blown away by the production on this album,
goodness.
bro. I mean, it was incredible. So shout out to all the producers that were involved here. The primary producers on the album were Mike Dean, 10 Tricks Point Never, Justice, Metro Boomin, Dahila, and many others. Max Martin had a big role to play, Oscar Holter as well, who've always worked with The Weeknd. at least for the more recent projects. So you're literally getting an all-star cast. I mean, you have fucking Pharrell killing it with the drums on Timeless.
You have
Like,
choirs in here
bro.
as well. Like, there's a whole cast of producers and background vocalists that contributed to the soundscape of this beautiful album. What I like the most about it, bro, I'll tell you this. It's probably his most layered album production-wise. And to be honest with you, I think it's his best produced album.
Yep.
Without a fucking doubt. Like,
Easy.
it's not even a competition. I know people love After Hours and how cinematic that feels. If you like that, then you listen to this. To be quite honest with you, I feel like it's a completely different ball game. It's so advanced. It's so technical. I don't even know where to start, bro. Looking at something like Sao Paulo, like I was saying, that Brazilian funk beat, and then after that, when you're getting that distorted bass line that comes in towards the end, and your car speakers are shaking, it sounds absolutely fucking ridiculous. Then you go into something like "Giving Up on Me" and how dynamic that song is. The piano keys towards the end of that song, it's just a bunch of fuckery. Honestly, like I don't even know how they produced this album. I was blown wide away by like the production on this album. It's a completely different level. The vocal samples on here, or I don't even know if they're fucking vocal samples. I think it's probably the choir.
Well, some of them are. Like, for example, Giving Up on Me was Nina Simone.
That was a Nina Simone sample.
Simone
But how about I
sample.
Can't Wait to Get There?
I Can't Wait to Get There.
That's a choir. That's a choir, I believe.
Yeah, I don't think that's a sample on there. I don't believe so. But yeah, just beautiful chords, sweeping gospel synth pad on there. You get Thundercat vibes with just the bass line and the grooves on that
heavenly.
track. It's beautiful. But yeah, man, when it comes to this album, it sounded fucking expensive. Like, it sounded like they spent millions of dollars to get, like, classic analog synths and so many rare instruments. And I just love how progressive the instrumentals are. It's progressive, it's colorful, it's futuristic, pop synthscapes that will take you from point A to point Z. Like, every song feels like a journey. It feels like a ride. And
the sequencing on this album is stupid.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
The sequencing, if you want to get to that. But first thing I want to say, the synthesizer is a hell of a fucking weapon, and they use the fuck out of it on this album, and it never felt overused once because of how many other elements were at play. But going into the sequencing, yeah, it's masterful, bro. Like, the way the vocals and the synths carry over from Baptized and Fire into Open Hearts, that's his best ever song-to-song transition. Even looking at Niagara Falls to Take Me Back to LA, the way they brought that chord back in, mind blown.
It's absolutely mind blowing. Even something like I Can't Fucking Sing It, the Sao Paulo, like that's one big song. Cry For Me ends off, and then it goes into I Can't Fucking Sing It, and you get the backing production. And then I Can't Fucking Sing is only 11 seconds, right? And like you see, like he's saying it, and then you almost hear the production from Sao Paulo that's creeping up on the track itself. You were talking about Synth Heaven. Wake Me Up was just beautiful, bro.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like you were floating in space. I didn't even know where I was.
And it started off so cinematic because you had that slow moving heartbeat, and then you got this Giorgio Moroder sample, which was used as the theme. As the theme song in Scarface, and then you get a switch up to like some synth heavy production that leads into this funky groove that is super inspired by Thriller by Michael Jackson, or maybe directly samples Thriller by Michael Jackson.
And then it segues right into Cry For Me, and then I think at that point in the live album reaction, I think we knew we were in for a show.
Yeah, we knew we were in for something special.
I don't even know what to say about this production.
One beat I got to talk about is Niagara Falls, just because that trippy electronic vocal sample was such a fucking highlight. They sampled some classic 90s R&B with Someone to Love by John B and Babyface, and the way that they looped it and pitched it lower towards the end was genius, bro. Just progressive pop heaven all throughout that track. Apart from that, man, I mean,
even the cinematic value that they put on something like Big Sleep, like it almost feels like you're leaving planet Earth, and there's these futuristic sounds that reminds me a lot of like Sampha's catalog, to be honest with you. I felt like I was listening to a couple of tracks off of his newest album that he released a couple of years ago. So just overall, even like the drums on Timeless, the drum work on this album too was absolutely exquisite. I don't even know what to say, bro. I really don't know what to say about the production. It's probably one of the best produced albums I've heard this decade.
Yeah, it truly is, man. I think it's it's really a serious feat what they were able to accomplish here. And I think that, Weeknd was getting some flack with Dawn FM, with After Hours, sometimes as the trilogy's viewed as a whole, seeing that there's an over-reliance on the 80s synth pop where, well, he
just said fuck it.
he blew that out of the water just because he brought in some 70s influence now as well with the Chipmunk Soul renditions that you're getting on certain songs. Not only that, but you're getting songs like Open Hearts, which have these retro disco synths, but then it forms into this dark, fast-paced techno beat, which is absolutely unreal. Then you get the foray into Brazilian funk like we were talking about with Sao Paulo. So it's definitely just the biggest palette of sounds that you're getting ever on a Weeknd album, in my opinion.
And they also play into the thematic basis of the songs as well, right? Like going into Reflections Laughing, when you have Cherry 22 that comes in. I know we spoke about this, but these are things that I appreciate, right? Almost like what Kendrick Lamar did on You, for example, where you hear like the bottle clanking in that song, you hear the doormaid at the door, and you feel like you're in the setting with Kendrick Lamar. I felt like I was in the hotel room with him, right? You hear the phone ringing. Like you said, you hear him popping open the bottle of pills, and you hear them shaking. You hear him drinking and sipping on, whatever he is, and, he has the ice clanking. Like, that to me means a lot. Also, some of the synths that you hear when Travis comes in reminded me of shit that you hear on like fucking DBR or Rodeo. And I'm like, dude, like, what is he doing here? How do you make everything work so well together from track to track throughout all of it? Production's perfect.
It's flawless.
Production
it's fucking flawless, and I think that it's gonna be inspirational for pop artists and people coming up in
Who's
the game.
Who's playing on this game?
No, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen.
It doesn't play. I'm sorry. This album is.
It's the full package.
It's the full
package.
The
full fucking package.
Yeah,
bro.
It's everything. But okay, replay value.
Bro, 22 songs and you don't have a single miss?
No.
What the fuck?
It's crazy.
Are you kidding me?
I told you. I think once we had gotten to like probably, what was it, Big Sleep in the Stream, I'm like, the rest of the album could be shit and like, I'm cool. I would still probably give it an amazing rating. Like, I actually don't care. I genuinely don't care. Then you're getting some of the best tracks towards the latter half of the track list as well. Like you said, 22 songs, no misses. Also, I feel like what's going to really boost the score for the replay value is like, the variety of songs that you're going to be able to take out of this. If you want more of like that toxic and more of that, trilogy-esque like Weeknd type of performances, you could get that maybe on songs like Cry For Me, for example. If you want something that feels new for his catalog, something that, he's never done before, you have like a Sao Paulo that's going to go crazy in the clubs. If you want to marvel at a magnum opus and just whip something on and just absolutely stare at it and wonder how he did it, you have something like that on Given Up On Me. Then if you want more of like the rap-centric sort of Weeknd, you have that on Enjoy the Show, and I can't wait to get there. So there's so much variety throughout the track list when it comes to the replay value, and I really appreciate that. And I love this album as well because, a lot of pop albums suffer from like, song to song, it's the same themes. They're recycling verses and topic matter, and there's not much topical focus throughout all of it. But with this pop album, and I don't even know if you could call it a pop album, to be honest with you, as a whole, like, you have to be locked in from start to finish to really understand it. If you really want to, like, sit down and nerd over the writing of an album, you could do that as well. You could listen to it as a loose listen. It passed the car test with flying colors. When I whip this, like when I put this in the whip, it's stupid. It's absolutely stupid. It's crazy.
Bro, yeah, you could honestly, it doesn't matter what kind of speakers you're listening to this music on, it's gonna fucking go crazy
it's gonna
anywhere.
Sound great.
But yeah, when it comes to the replay value, I think that what's also gonna increase its level for me is the fact that this is Abel's last album as The Weeknd immortalizes it in music history, because when people want to know how the saga ended and they want to think back to how the character arc closed for The Weeknd, they're going to keep coming back here because it's unique. It stands on its own, right? The same way that House of Balloons will always be the iconic beginning, the mixtape, the introduction to this, elusive character. This is the final chapter, and like you said, some of the most diverse tracks within a compact album that you can find. And I think that the cinematic value also adds so fucking much. This album is the closest album I've heard to being a movie in a very long time. Like it really dominates in the skits, in the song to song transitions. It's an album that, I said this in the reaction, it grabs hold of you and doesn't fucking let you go. And I think that, there's some more casual Weeknd fans, I want to say, that expected, high tempo club bangers from start to finish. And yes, the second half does mellow out and become softer and more delicate, but that's not to say that you don't have songs like Cry For Me or Open Hearts or Sao Paulo that are fast tempo and that are fucking knocking and that you will hear on the radio. But that wasn't the approach here. Even though The Weeknd is one of the biggest pop stars in the world, he had no desire of crafting a number one hit here. That was so evident by the end of the album.
He took so many risks with this album, and I think that that's what's going to make a lot of his core fans happy. How could I change it up from Dawn FM and from After Hours? If he came in with a similar album, I think people would have been happy, but I don't think they would have been marveling at it like they are now. And to speak about the latter half of the track list, because I was seeing comments like that, right, where people were like, yeah, but it gets a bit boring towards the end and like it gets mellowed out.
Yeah.
Bro, I love these songs, man. Like something like Give Me Mercy, how slow tempo that song is, it's euphoric, it's heavenly. I think that people may have suffered from being overspoiled with this album where it's like, let me find something. But if you take those songs and you put them in the context of the album or even separate them, you'll realize that those are some of the strongest cuts on this entire fucking album. A song like The Abyss, to be able to get that duet and to be able to see, what they're able to do once again between Lana and The Weeknd, it was a treat. It was a treat, perfect replay value. Perfect replay value.
100% perfect replay value. But yeah, guys, listen, at this point, you've seen these fucking scores. You know where this is headed for the overall thoughts.
And we kind of gave our overall thoughts, on the album.
We did. I mean, fuck. I feel like we've been speaking about this album for an hour, and we could speak about it for another hour if we wanted to. But point blank, Hurry Up Tomorrow is The Weeknd's magnum opus. This is the masterpiece that he's been building up towards creating throughout his entire career. It feels like the 15 years of world building, of insane production and storytelling has all amounted to this. It's a culmination of everything. And when he sings, I just want to die when I'm at my fucking peak, it feels like he accomplished exactly that, going out once he's reached the pinnacle of his artistic powers. And I want to ask you this, as a fan, do you feel like this is the proper end? Because I feel that way. I feel like, we already got, groundbreaking dark R&B that The Weeknd, created a whole subgenre for at the beginning of his career. Now we got into the space where it built up towards him, reliving and rehashing this 80s synth pop that's so retro and so cool because he's adding his own twist to it. And now he's lived this life of wanting to be a troubled youth who is chasing the stars. And now for so long he's been in the hills and he's lived this hedonistic lifestyle. It's like, what more is there left to do for the character arc?
But there isn't.
That's it.
There's really not. And I'm telling you, I think he said that without having to say it on Hurry Up Tomorrow. And the transition right into the first installment of the trilogy. Going into House of Balloons, like bringing it back there, it was like this whole full circle moment. And like you said, he attacked the moody, dark R&B scene, and he created his own subgenre of R&B within that trilogy. He attacked more of the polished pop albums with albums like Starboy. He went into more world-building albums where it had, that retro 80s synth pop that was very reminiscent of, let's say, Michael Jackson, with albums like After Hours and Dawn FM. This is everything in one.
Mm-hmm.
This is, if you're a Weeknd fan, you look at this and you're like, this is the complete package. As far as what he could do as an artist, it's the complete package as far as what he could do as a writer. It's the complete package as, a tastemaker and working with some of the best producers in the entire world. And he took a fucking risk with this. 22 songs, it's hard to pull off. It's hard, but he went for the glory and he got it. He risked it for the biscuit and he got it.
Fuck yeah.
He genuinely did it. And he ended off on such a strong note. Ladies and gentlemen, NFR's first perfect rating.
perfect
Yeah,
rating for, and
you
it's
know,
so ironic because it's not a hip hop album, but it's just the way the cards fell. That's just what happened, and it's an exciting time. I feel like with the release of this album, Imaginal Disc, it feels like we're entering into a stage of just excellent pop records. So that's really exciting, and more than anything, I think this is probably the most I've ever been excited for a new Weekend, or I should say Abel era, because now I'm expecting a major shift and change with whatever music Abel decides to release going forward. So it's sort of unprecedented times.
and
right
it might
now.
not even be that. Maybe it's film, right? Maybe it's
Yeah.
executive producing. Maybe he's going to become an exec. Like, who knows? And I think that's what this album did for me. It closed off a chapter, but it opened up a new one. And who knows what we're going to get out of Abel. But ladies and gentlemen, first perfect rating. How do you feel? I never, honestly, we've had conversations about it and we're like, I don't know. I never know. We came close with sometimes I might be introvert. We went back on our word and we are like, you know what? We should have rated that perfect. I knew with this album, as soon as I listened to it, I'm like, no.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can't kid myself. And then going through the review, I'm like, okay, it's serious to say that. That's a serious statement. But I genuinely do feel like this is a perfect studio album experience from start to finish.
Some albums you just know in the first listen, and we were saying it, this feels like an instant classic album, and we'll see obviously how it ages, but it's pretty cool that it took us this long. Like, we weren't too easy with the rating, but again, we pretty much knew. Obviously, upon more listens, I became even more amazed by this body of work, but
sure.
that first listen in the Patreon community, we kind of looked at each other and we're like, this is probably going to be it.
This is going to be it.
Yeah.
And that's exactly how we felt, guys. Perfect rating for Hurry Up Tomorrow, the 6th studio album from the Weeknd. So, guys, let us know. Where do we get it right? Where do we get it wrong? And what's your favorite track off of this album?
What are your top three before we end this off,
yeah, let's do a
actually?
tradition, right?
Or top five. Fuck it. Top five loose order.
Top
Just-
5 loose
if
order?
You have to keep five. You got to
Okay,
keep
no
those five.
order. I'm keeping
No
just
order.
5. The Abyss is a lock. That's
Wow,
for
really?
Sure.
I didn't expect that.
The Abyss
Okay,
is a
W.
lock. I'm for sure keeping Given Up on Me. I'm for sure going to be keeping Baptized in Fear. I'm for sure going to be keeping, I don't know. I think, yeah, I Can't Wait to Get There has to stay. And then I want to
One
say,
more.
it's so hard, right? Do you go Reflections Laughing because, you know, it's so cinematic? Or do I go to something like a Red Terror? I'm going to say Give Me Mercy. Fuck it.
Wow, okay.
I think those 5 for me.
W's.
What do you got? 5.
I got... Ooh,
I'm telling you, it's very
so tough. I Can't Wait to Get There and Giving Up on Me. Actually, that whole 3-track run. Enjoy the Show, Giving Up on Me, I Can't Wait to Get There are safe. 2 more only. I probably have to go Niagara Falls because I love the production. And then one more, I think Wake Me Up. It was such a fucking killer intro. But listen, guys, that's going to conclude the review. It's been a lengthy one. Listen, it's not every day that we give a perfect album, so hopefully you guys enjoyed the conversation, but you guys continue the conversation now in the comment section. Let us know using our scale, how would you grade this album? Were you satisfied? Did it live up to all of the hype? And if you guys do want to catch our first live reaction to this album, check out the pinned comment, and you guys could access that and our entire reaction catalog, which has over 100 reactions in it. Thank you guys so much for sticking until the end, and we'll see you on the next one. Peace out.